Courageous.
Arose.
Comforting.
Patient.
Supportive. Selfless.
Creative.
Charitable.
Loving.
Awesome.
Selfless. Exuberant.
Ninja.
Devoted.
Empathetic.
Love.
Sacrificial.
Mentor.
Supportive.
Fierce.
Nice.
Understanding.
Kind.
Fabulous.
Thank you. So if you are visiting tonight, I really hope that you'll come back next week so you can hear my husband speak, because he is such a gifted teacher. And I know that, he can say what I'm going to say about 100 times better. So make sure you come back and listen to him. So let's jump in. I heard this story about a father, and he had 3 very young children. And he comes home from work, and he finds there's chip bags on the lawn. There's like candy wrappers blowing across the grass. The kids are half naked, and they're playing in the mud. And he's thinking, what in the world is going on? So he goes up to the house. The front door is open. He's thinking, this place has been ransacked or something. So he walks in, and it's even worse. Because in the kitchen, there's like a gallon of milk spilled. There's a box of cereal dumped onto the milk, onto the floor, which the cat is lapping up. So he's wondering where his wife is. He says, I'm going to run upstairs. So he runs upstairs. And on his way up, he can hear the water is running in the bathroom. So he's thinking, oh, she's in the shower. The kids just went crazy or something while she's taking a shower. But that's not what's happened. What he sees is there's water pouring, overflowing from the bathtub. It's seeping into the rug in the hallway. So he's really concerned. So he finally gets up to the bedroom. He opens up the door, and he finds his wife. And she's in bed reading a novel. And, she looks up, and she gives him a smile and says, "How was your day, honey?" And he's like, "Fine, but what happened here today?" And she says, every day how you come home and you ask me what I do all day? And he goes, "Yeah." And she says, "Well, today I didn't do it." So I want to wish all you moms, I know, right? Moms do it all, don't they? They really do, and they really are the lifeblood of the home. And I really want to wish all you moms a very, very happy Mother's Day. So the story that we're going to be talking about today, I love, because it's not just for moms, and it's not just for dads, but it's for everybody. And we're looking at a woman of great faith. So we don't know this woman's name. We don't know a lot about her. All we know is that Jesus, when he meets this woman, he's on his way to heal Jairus' daughter. Now, Jairus, we do know something about, because he was a very important leader in the Jewish church, in the synagogue. So we know who he is, and they've mentioned his name there because he's extremely important. But this woman was very unimportant, and Jesus is interrupted by this very unimportant woman. I wonder if any of you guys ever feel unimportant. I have felt unimportant or unnoticed or unworthy. Well, that was certainly how this woman felt. All right, so we're going to be reading today out of Mark chapter 5, and starting in verse 25. And this is what it says about her. It says, "And a certain woman which had an issue of blood 12 years." So that's the first thing that we learn about her. She's a woman. She's a certain woman. They don't bother to mention her name. It's not really important. But we learn that she has an issue of blood for 12 years. So that's her problem. So I want to give you a little background about what that was, because you might not know. So we do know that this woman was a Jew. And in the Jewish culture, there were rules pretty much about everything. So in this case, this woman had an issue of blood. It meant she had something like a hemorrhage that was lasting for 12 years. Now, if you were a Jew, there were certain rules about how you were supposed to live while you were having any type of bleeding of that kind. Even if it was your normal monthly thing going on, ladies, there were certain rules. You were considered to be unclean during that time. So that meant that you couldn't go to synagogue during that time. It meant that if you touched another human being, that person would be unclean, and they wouldn't be able to go to synagogue at that time. And they would have to go through certain ritual. They would have to bathe themselves if you touched them. They would have to wash their clothing if you touched them. And they'd have to wait until the end of the day till they would be clean again. So it was a pretty inconvenient thing to be considered unclean. Also, anything that a woman sat on during the time she was bleeding or anything she laid down on, like her bed, would also be unclean. So ladies, if you think you have it tough, think again, because it was pretty difficult. Now imagine that this was going on for her for 12 years. It did not stop for 12 years. So she had an issue of blood. I wonder if any of you guys have any issues. Do you have any issues? You ever hear somebody say, you have issues? You know, or I've got issues. I do have some issues. A lot of people will ask me, where does your husband come up with all of the material that he teaches on? And I let them know that he's just basically trying to fix me. So we all have issues. I don't know what your issue might be, but an issue is something that you wish you could control or you wish you could stop it, but you're powerless to. That's an issue. So for your notes, let's write this down. It says, sometimes your issue becomes so big that it consumes your identity. It certainly did for the woman that we're talking about. It consumed her identity to the point that her name was the woman with the issue of blood. I wonder if you have an issue that's like that. I have some labels here that sometimes we put on people, or maybe we put on ourselves. So the woman we're talking about today, her label was that she was unclean. She was unclean, so she was not able to do a lot of things because she was unclean. I wonder if anybody here has an addiction and somebody has said, well, that person's just an addict. That's their name. They're an addict. Maybe some of you guys here are sick and you begin to identify yourself as a sick person, as a cancer patient or something like that. That's another label. That's another issue, is being sick. What about that person is a codependent. That person just needs to be needed by somebody, even if it's really unhealthy. They're a codependent. Put that one on the baby. He's pretty dependent on me right now. What about depressed? Anybody in here ever get depressed? I have that issue sometimes, where I feel depressed. Oh man, running out of space here. Put it right here. Here's one that a lot of people, and especially women, will put on themselves because they've been abused and they can't seem to overcome that issue. They want to do things in their life. They want to go far for God. They want to help people, but they just keep saying, but I've been abused. And it's difficult to get past that. None of these things are easy to get past. How about inadequate? A lot of moms feel that way, right? We feel like, how can I do this? How can I work a job and take care of my kids? You know, I'm always asking that. Am I messing up my kids? And if so, how bad? You know, you just wish you knew if you were doing it right or if you were doing it wrong. Maybe you have a different kind of issue, maybe something like a marriage problem that you've been dealing with for a long time. Or you might have a struggling child, a child that you really want to help, but you just don't know how. There's so many different issues. Maybe you've got a lot of family drama in your extended family or in your immediate family. There's always fires that you feel like you have to put out, and that's your issue. You feel like you have to deal with that all of the time. All right, so let's take a look at how this woman decided to deal with her issues. So look at me at verse 26. It said, she had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years she had spent everything she had to pay them. but she had gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten worse. So she's in a pretty desperate situation here. She started out having some resources. She's trying to figure out this issue of blood, how she can get this to stop. And she's trying and she's trying and she's done everything that she knows to do. She spent everything and probably lost everything. So there's no hope. I wonder if anybody here has been in a hopeless situation like that. Maybe it was with a doctor, maybe trying to get help for some type of problem and finding that the doctors were unable to help you. My family's had that happen a couple of times. After our first child was born, a couple days after, I became extremely, extremely ill to the point of not being able to lift myself out of bed because of the pain that I had. And during that time, just a shout out to my mom, because she was there every day to pull me up out of bed and to help take care of our daughter, Belle, so that my husband could return to work. Moms do that kind of thing. And it was a difficult time because we went to several doctors, and the sickness lasted for months, and the pain lasted for months. And we just kept thinking, there's got to be something we could do. There's got to be something we could do. And the last doctor that we went to, he said, there's really nothing wrong with you. We've tested you for everything. There isn't. There's nothing that we can do. He said, you had a baby and your body freaked out, basically. And that was kind of the end of it. And so we were at a point where we just had to trust God to bring a resolution and to bring a healing for that. And a similar situation that we've been dealing with and have dealt with our son, Reuben, is that he's had a chronic stomach pain problem. And it was a similar thing. He went from the pediatrician to the allergist to the specialist up at Yale. And basically what they told us was there's really nothing that we can do for this type of condition. There isn't anything wrong with him. He's going to experience pain. What do you do when somebody tells you that, right, about your child? Well, that's where you really start to trust God. So this woman had tried everything. She had tried all the medicine. She had tried all the essential oils, all the lavender, all the oregano oil, all that stuff. Whatever they were prescribing, she had tried it, and it had only made the situation worse. So by this point, we don't know if this woman had children. We don't know if she had a family, but if she did, she likely would have lost all of that. She likely would have lost her husband if she had that, because she wouldn't be able to touch anybody in her household. She wouldn't be able to care for her children. So she likely was a loner, living on her own with this issue of blood. So her issue was separating her from everything that she cared about. Our issues can do the same thing to us. They can isolate us. So in your notes, write this down. Eventually, your issue can isolate you. You don't want people to know what your issue is. You don't want them to realize what you're going through. You maybe don't want to face it yourself either. As a teenager, I had a little run-in with an eating disorder, and it was very isolating. I didn't want anybody to know that I was dealing with that, and I did a lot of isolating things, like at school I would go to the library during lunch so that people wouldn't realize that I wasn't really eating a good lunch. I wouldn't go to birthday parties where they might be eating pizza or other things that I didn't want to eat. It was very isolating, and I tried to keep the issue to myself until it just got too big. How have you tried to handle your issues? Have you tried to ignore them? Maybe you've tried to self-medicate using drugs or alcohol to kind of numb that pain that you have. Maybe you're one of those people who loves to distract yourself by being really busy all the time. If I'm just busy, then I won't have to pay attention to this issue that's eating at me. Maybe you've tried to change your circumstances. You thought, it's just a midlife crisis. Maybe if I get a new job or I get married or I have some kids, my issue will go away. But the issue remains. Moms have a lot of issues to deal with, right? Because we try to help our kids with their issues too, right? Absolutely. All right. for your notes. There are some issues in life that you can't solve on your own. Your friend can't, your therapist can't sometimes, and your spouse can't. Maybe you've tried going to all of those different people, trying to get help for whatever issue it is that you have. So this woman with the issue of blood, she was in kind of a bad place, wasn't she? She had no money, she had no family. People probably avoided her like the plague because they couldn't touch her, they couldn't go near her, they couldn't spend time in her home, right? So she was in a pretty bad place. Or was she? Or was she? Write this down. Faith starts at the beginning of human limitation. You know, I've never had to trust God for water because I turn on the faucet and it comes out, right? But if one day I turned that faucet on and nothing came out and I couldn't run to the store and buy Poland Springs, then I would have to start trusting God for water, right? I would have to start praying about God to supply that need for water. It's the same thing with an illness, right? When everything's fine, we don't need to trust God. See, our faith starts at the point of human limitation. It begins when we realize that we can't figure it out on our own. So she had tried her own way, and it didn't work. She had done everything she could possibly do. Maybe you guys have done that. Ever have those late night CVS trips when you're feeling really sick and you know you have to go to work the next day and you're just buying everything, right? She had done that. That was done. She tried her own way and it didn't work. Let's look at Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5. One of my favorite verses. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not depend on your own understanding." So her understanding, right, was to go to the doctors, to go to her friends. What's your understanding? What do you try to do in your own strength? A lot of times we have our own ideas about what we need to do to take care of our issues. I know I'll just go for counseling. That's going to fix me. I'll just go to this doctor or that doctor. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't use doctors or counselors. My family and I have used both of those, and they can be very helpful. But who do we go to first when we have an issue? That's the question. Where is our faith? So our own understanding could include anything from, asking our friends, putting it out on Facebook. Hey, what should I do in this situation, right? Just asking everybody, trying to figure it out on our own. We often want to just figure things out on our own, right? We just want to fix it. Whatever problem it is, we just want to fix it. My kids are little. They have pretty small issues right now, I know as kids get older and we become adults, our issues get bigger, right? But in my house, the issues are still, for the most part, pretty small. And, a lot of them happen at bedtime when I want to sit on the couch and have ice cream with my husband. So pretty much at the point when the lights go out is when we hear things like, my head hurts, all of a sudden it's like, this thing itches, when I press here, it hurts, so we're yelling, don't press there, right? But usually what I want to do is fix it. Okay, what do you want? You want Tums? You want some lavender oil? What do you want? Just tell me. I just want everybody's issues to stop. But is that what our first response should be to any issue, big or small? Should that be our first response? We just want to fix it. No, that shouldn't be our first response. Our first response should be to take it to the Lord. All right, so this woman that had the issue of blood, she'd probably heard the rumors about Jesus. Jesus was healing people. He was feeding people. He was doing these amazing things that nobody had ever been done before. And she sees that this could be an opportunity for her. All right, so let's look at verse 27 of Mark. And it says, she had heard about Jesus, so she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. For she thought to herself, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. So she takes a tremendous risk here. Because don't forget, if she touches Jesus, if she touches anybody, she'll be making them unclean. So it's not something that she really wants to do. She would be breaking the Jewish law to do this, and she could be punished, or she could be yelled at by somebody. She doesn't want to maybe expose herself to further rejection, but she sees at this point that she has nothing to lose. But you can hear in that verse where her faith is beginning to grow, because it says she thought to herself, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. She doesn't even say if I can touch his arm. She doesn't need to touch his body. She says just his robe. She believes at that point that if she just touches the very fabric that is on his body, she will be healed. And she begins to believe that. She begins to believe that he can handle this issue that she has. Now, if you want on your own, I think you should read this story again. It's told again in Luke chapter 8. And in that passage, she says it a little differently. She says, if I could touch just the hem of his robe, I will be healed. And from reading that passage, it indicates that she's on her knees, that she's reaching, she's crawling to get a hold of Jesus, even if it's just the hem, the dirtiest, lowest spot on Jesus's robe. She believes that she will be healed. And there's a tremendous crowd of people that are pressing around Jesus. But her faith is beginning to grow here, and she's reaching and trying to get a hold of him, and she does. All right. Let's read on here, verse 29. It says, immediately, this is after she's touched his robe, immediately the bleeding stopped. And she could feel in her body that she had been healed of her terrible condition. Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out of him. So he turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my robe? His disciples said to him, look at this crowd pressing around you. How can you ask who touched me? But he kept on looking around to see who had done it. Then the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, came and fell to her knees in front of him and told him what she had done. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over. So, this crowd of people is pressing around Jesus. And, he doesn't mention anybody else getting healed that had been bumping into him. We don't hear of anybody else in this crowd getting healed. But she was healed because of her faith. And that's what he says to her. He says, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Now, it also says here that the woman, she was frightened, and she's trembling, realizing what had happened to her. So why was she frightened? She was a little frightened because she's thinking about what she just did. She's unclean. She just touched Jesus, and now what is he gonna say? Is he gonna rebuke her? What's gonna happen? But he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. What he does is he starts to remove her old label. Where's hers over here? Unclean. He removes the old label, which was unclean, and he gives her a new name. And he calls her daughter. I bet nobody called her that in a long time, or anything endearing for that matter. All right, in your notes, put my faith plus Jesus' power can make a miracle. So she's entered our Overcomers Club because she overcame through her faith. Now, what no man could accomplish in her life, what no doctor could do, Jesus was able to do it. What nobody else was willing to deal with, Jesus was willing to deal with. What was declared unclean was now unclean. So her issue, her uncleanliness, it didn't make Jesus unclean, but his cleanliness and his power rubbed off on her. You see what Jesus is saying here? He's saying, bring it. I can handle your issue. I don't care what it is. It might be a big issue. It might be a little issue. He can handle it. He can handle it. And he wants you to bring it to him. There's a verse that says that we can cast our care upon him because he cares about us. As unnoticed and as unspecial as this woman with the issue of blood was, Jesus wanted to heal her, and he did. And he did. He's saying, bring it. Whatever it is that you've got, he can handle it. He can handle it. All right, for your notes, it says, you're not going to get the help you need if you don't bring it to Jesus. You might be thinking, well, what if I bring it and, nothing happens? Well, I know you're not going to get the help if you don't bring it to him. Let's let that be our first response when we're having an issue. Not that we don't ever see a doctor or ever get counsel from a really good, trusted friend. But do we bring it to him first, knowing that he knows best, knowing that his wisdom is greater than our wisdom, that his thoughts are not our thoughts, and that sometimes we might think that we know the right way, and we don't. And we don't. All right, so Hebrews 16 says, so let us come boldly to the throne of our gracious God. There we will receive his mercy, and we will find grace to help us when we need it most. She came boldly, didn't she? She took a big risk. She really put herself out there. Do you go boldly to God's throne with your problems, or do you just try to fix them yourself? This verse says that we can go boldly to him without fear of being reproached, without fear of God condemning us for whatever issue it is. It could be a sin. It could be a problem. It could be depression. It could be something you don't have control of that you're battling. It doesn't matter what it is. But we can come boldly to him and receive his mercy and his grace to help us when we need it. For your notes, write down, live a life of faith and not doubt. And not doubt. When your plan is not enough, his is. When your strategy isn't working, his can. But let's not wait until we're completely out of options. This woman, she only had one choice. She had to wait until Jesus was there in the flesh so that she could reach out and touch him. Aren't you glad we don't have to do that? We have a risen Savior who is accessible to us 24/7. He's there for us. We don't have to wait until we have nothing left. We don't have to wait until we're totally out of options, till we've seen every doctor and talked to every single friend about our issue. We can go to God first. He's accessible to us now. And Hebrews 4:15 illustrates this really nicely. It says we don't have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses. We have a high priest. We have Jesus who is able to empathize. He can feel the pain that we are feeling. And he can help us with that. He empathizes with our weaknesses. He says, bring it. He says, bring whatever you've got to me. Bring it to me first. Let me help you with it. We need to keep pushing through that crowd, whatever is stopping us, whatever is holding us back from bringing our issues to God. We need to let those things go tonight. All right, let's pray together. Father, I just thank you for your good word, and I thank you for sharing with us this miracle that this woman experienced. God, I just know that you want to free us from whatever issues we are facing. Father, I just pray that you would help each person here to bring whatever issue they're having today, to bring it before you. Father, I pray that they would lay it at the hem of your robe, Father. God, I pray for those who maybe feel that they don't have a lot of faith right now. They maybe only have a little bit. Father, I pray that you would encourage those who are just feeling like they just can't put all their faith in you. Father, just help them to put that little bit that they have in you, Father, and to see what you are able to do with that. God, just be with my brothers and sisters here. Strengthen them, Father. Draw each of us close to you and let us know just how much you deeply care for us.